This one was suggested a few times, but mostly just by Bloodhush on Patreon. On some level, something I like to do with these mini-talking videos is talking about minor characters who, despite only showing up a few times, come up a lot in fandom and fandom discussion. And that is very much the case with Lionblaze and Cinderheart's daughter Hollytuft, who seems to spark a lot of imagination despite never being on screen. And yeah, on some level, it's because she's a blank slate that she gets so much attention, but she's not a completely blank slate. Because of her nature as a complete background character, I am going to focus a little bit more on implications than usual, kind of like I did with Hairstar. The reason that Hollytuft does get all of this attention that other background characters don't get is because she is named after and identical to her aunt Hollyleaf, and if you are watching this video from a closet where you've never read a Warrior Cats book or seen a Warrior Cats video, Hollyleaf is one of the most popular characters in the entire series. So she's identical to Hollyleaf, and by extension, canonically, she probably also looks a lot like Crowfeather. She has 2 littermates, Squirrelflight, a completely pinnacle of nothing background character whose biggest accomplishment is having given birth to more relevant characters, and then the comparatively much more relevant Fernsong. Squirrelstripe and Fernsong are also named after cats who died in the Great Battle, just like she was, with her sister Squirrelstripe being named after Sorreltail, and her brother Fernsong being named after Ferncloud. Likewise, Lionblaze and Cinderheart's second litter Flywhisker, Snaptooth, and Spotfur includes even more characters with even more relevancy than Hollytuft was ever given. Flywhisker and Snaptooth are mentored by Twigbranch and Finleap, who are main characters. Spotfur becomes a main character herself, is very relevant in the Broken Code, and even gets her own novella and is one of the better Warrior Cats characters, period. I really like her. Hollytuft, by even minusculely relevant, absolute nothing background character standards, is not very relevant. She barely exists. I'll go over everything she's ever done, because it is not much. The first we ever see of Hollytuft is her apprentice ceremony, which is included in the manga bit for Bramblestar's Storm. A clan of cats who all have the exact same faces and body structures look on to the event, and Sandstorm and Squirrelflight comment about how much Hollykit looks like Hollyleaf. There, she's apprenticed to Cloudtail. Then, in the same comic insert, we see her in a training session that Squirrelflight is attending with Bramblestar. After Hollypaw loses her balance, Squirrelflight tries to show her a trick, but also falls over. 2 short manga scenes are about all we see of Hollypaw's life before she's Hollytuft. I know it's not actually manga, but it was marketed as being a manga at the time. The cover of Bramblestar's Storm even says, "Exclusive manga adventure inside." The manga of Bramblestar's Storm probably takes place somewhere around 7 or 8 moons before the apprentice's quest. They've been warriors for a few months by the time it starts up. I think that it could have been interesting for their characters, in that the litter has nobody, really, besides their siblings who are in their age group. I had a chunk explaining this, but if you remember, it was way too much and too distracting to fit in here. If you didn't watch that, here's what's relevant to Hollytuft specifically. Her and her siblings grew up without any other cats in the nursery or in the apprentice's den. Additionally, they're part of a weird generation of cats that start in the Vicky era and end somewhere halfway through A Vision of Shadows that really just grew up off-screen. So by the second book of A Vision of Shadows, Hollytuft and her siblings are basically already over 2 years old. The first thing a main series book establishes about Hollytuft is that she's been a warrior for a few moons. The second thing that it establishes is that her mentor was not Cloudtail, it was Blossomfall. I personally just take this change as a reality. Firstly, because the original information came not from a book, but from a bonus comic at the end of one, which always feels kind of arbitrary. I'll take what a newer, more mainline entry says over a comic in the back of an older book any day of the week. Second reason is because Cloudtail has had, 3 other apprentices? Third, I like this better for Blossomfall, who, if you remember Doveling Silence, was struggling majorly to try and atone for her actions in turning on her clan. And fourth, based on how Hollytuft acts when we eventually actually see her, it makes much more sense that she was trained by someone like Blossomfall than a former kitty pet like Cloudtail. Sorry to everybody who was really looking forward to the upward trajectory of Hollytuft's character arc, but she only has one direction to go from here. Hollytuft is seen, and not heard, through all of Vision of Shadows. She is mentioned a bit in the first book, and after that she shares tongues, nods yes or no, murmurs things in ears, but is otherwise just a body on patrols. We don't know a thing about her and don't hear a peep from her in all 6 books. This silence, however, is a quality unique to her. Snowbush, part of Brightheart and Cloudtail's second litter in The Last Hope, comes close in that he literally never says a single word in A Vision of Shadows, then basically gets himself killed in a rock slide, but suddenly Snowbush is important and gets to speak his first and last words as he's struggling not to die horribly. Really, the man says nothing ever, and then pushes Alderheart out of the way of a giant rock. I'm almost surprised they let him have this one 3-word statement, but the rest of the characters do at least say something. Hollytuft, while she is around and occasionally mentioned, has nothing to say in A Vision of Shadows. She is, at this point, the most minor of the minor ThunderClan cats, and I remember having jokes with friends about the fact that she's never spoken before. We start up Lost Stars with her as a mentor to a main character's sibling, and she's seen with him, but that's about it. No speaking. The first thing she says, or is implied to say in the main series, is in the Silent Thaw, where she shouts traitor alongside Lilyheart and Berrynose when Squirrelflight is caught trying to trick the imposter. But in reality, and in the timeline of the series, we get an actual sentence from her a little bit earlier. In September 2019, a month before she shouts traitor, we get Squirrelflight's Hope, which is a book about some things, but it also is the book with the most Hollytuft content. It is the #1 Hollytuft resource. This is where we learn that Hollytuft is a jerk. She's seen a lot as Flippaw's mentor in this book, and she's also mentioned by Flippaw first, who says to Squirrelflight, "I'm glad you're back. Hollytuft said the sisters wanted to keep you captive forever." She appears not long after to scold him for talking about the sisters as if they were people and for fear-mongering. Later, she's in strong opposition to treating Sunrise, the sister cat who's dying in camp after a fight with a ShadowClan patrol. Then, a few minutes later, she comes back into camp as if that hadn't happened. The literal next chapter has her coming in and being like, "What happened?" She does not give an opinion on the situation the second time, but based on her other behaviors, we can probably assume it's the same opinion. They seem to align her opinions with Blossomfall's opinions in the book, which makes sense considering her demeanor and the fact that Blossomfall was her mentor. Otherwise, she does some tasks, performs some duties, no real other opinions aside from her narrowing her eyes alongside Birchfall when cats from other clans visit ThunderClan later. She seems capable as a warrior at the very least. That said, capable as a warrior doesn't really feel like it means much when I think every single cat who has ever graduated is capable as a warrior. So her being implied to yell traitor at Squirrelflight feels about right considering. Not sure about Lilyheart, however, who really doesn't seem like the type. Later, after Bristlefrost is made deputy by the imposter, Hollytuft is seemingly put off by a weird order from her. This could be for any number of reasons though, seeing as Briss was being suspicious at the time. We don't see her again until Book 5, where she, and you'll never believe it, at another clan meeting, accuses more people of being traitors. This time it's her full siblings, Flywhisker and Snaptooth, who have skipped town to become kitty pets. She gets yelled at by her mom and then scolded by Alderheart too. And then in the second book of A Starless Clan, she's seemingly friends with Birchfall, who she volunteers to hunt with. This is nice, as he's actually someone she's mentioned with quite a bit in Squirrelflight's Hope. But otherwise, she seems to decide this arc that it's better to just keep not speaking. So what do we get from this? Well, Hollytuft is xenophobic. For sure. I keep wanting to write unfortunately, but I don't think it's unfortunate for characters to be bad people. I think it's a good thing. It may be disappointing for Hollyleaf fans somewhat, but this isn't Hollyleaf's reincarnation. It's a kid who was named after her. She's her own person, and all she's ever been is, well, this kind of conservative, quick-to-accuse kind of cat. I feel like you kind of can see a line here. She may be Lionblaze and Cinderheart's kid, but they show her at opposition with her mother on her ideals. I can see, squinting at blurry shapes of this character, her looking up to and taking after Blossomfall, who's doubled down on her whole clan loyalty shtick after being doubted and suspected in the wake of not only being a Dark Forest trainee, but one of the more stubborn ones. This is a bit of a trend with warrior cats. Crowfeather seems to double down in this area after he almost ran away with Leafpool. Berryheart doubles down unsuccessfully after having a bad experience with the kin. I'm not really commenting on how much sense this behavior makes, more so that it's a thing that they seem to write a lot, if or not consciously. Hollytuft would be one removed from this idea, trained by someone who has a lot to prove about their loyalty and patriotism, getting all of the ideas, but none of the reasons. This is stuff I'm making up, of course. I'm not sure what the authors intended for me to read beyond, look, this cat was named after Hollyleaf. Speaking of which, something I've been over before, Hollytuft has never reflected on her own name, nor has anyone else beyond Squirrelflight and Sandstorm at her apprentice ceremony. Hollytuft is named after Hollyleaf. must be super rough because Hollyleaf was a mess. And the cats in the clan do know that Hollyleaf was a mess, at least somewhat. Hollyleaf herself is scarcely mentioned in newer books. In Darkest Night, when Hollyleaf appears to Alderheart and Leafpool, Alderheart's narration even gets the story wrong, saying, "The clan told vague stories of how they thought she died in a tunnel, though her body was never found. Jayfeather and Lionblaze hardly spoke of their dead littermate, and when they did, there was a strange tension in their words." She has an entire book where she comes back, Alderheart, and then another one where she dies again. Seemingly, this is also the narrative when they get to Squirrelflight's Hope. This is another topic I might need to make a video on, born horribly from this video that can't stay on topic. They do not know what happened to Hollyleaf. Look for it after I snap, which might be right after I'm done making this video. When Ashfur is a topic for some reason in the Broken Code, all the cats really know about Ashfur is that he tried to kill Hollyleaf back in the day, which also isn't true, but it makes sense in universe. Hollyleaf stalked down the guy and killed him. But who knows or doesn't know the version of the story that's actually correct is a nebulous idea in recent Warrior Cats. Later, I'll talk about it later. While Squirrelflight thinks about Hollyleaf a lot in her Super Edition and even talks to her in Heaven, she never relates her back to Hollytuft like she did when the latter was an apprentice. Likewise with Nightheart, who, while struggling with his original name Flamepaw and how it calls back to Fireheart, never once relates himself to other cats who are more directly named after dead relatives and friends. Honestly, you could argue that Hollytuft didn't even know she was named after Yeah, right. There is no way in heck that Lionblaze didn't tell her 40 times a minute, I'm sorry. She must have heard oohs and ahs about how much she resembled her aunt all throughout childhood. There's just no way. It's not on page, but it's genuinely unrealistic for it not to have happened. But that's it. That's everything. She's a cat. She mentored Flipclaw. And if she took after her mentor, Flipclaw sure as heck did not take after her. She's seen with her mentor, or maybe mentor, Blossomfall in Squirrelflight's Hope, and she's seen with Birchfall 4 or 5 times throughout the book, so you can be pretty sure that they're friends. She's also seen with Molewhisker twice. You could assume maybe they're friends as well. There's a lot of cats that we don't see her hanging around. Notably, she doesn't really spend time with her littermates past the first book. I know in that she's named after Hollyleaf she is conceptually interesting, but she's just never been utilized beyond hissing traitor at people. Everyone wants to love her, but she's like a feral cat who's never been picked up before. And I think that's sort of fun anyways. Here she is, the one you've been waiting for, weirdly aggressive background character named after one of the most popular cats in the series. I'm a hypocrite though, because every single negative line they give to somebody like Hollytuft, I think, good. I'm glad they didn't give that to Poppyfrost.